Welcome everybody to Sunday night. It is All Things Fantasy Grounds talk show with me, Rob Toohey, and my co-host Leroon, and our special guest this evening is Geo Quester. How you doing, Leroon?
I'm doing good. Just chilling out. Just got back from Mother's Day. I guess we call it a dunch, a dinner lunch. And I'm having ice cream for dinner. That's what I'm having.
Because it's hot. All right, excellent. Before we introduce our guest, I am, as always, going to switch over the screen and do our disclaimer, and then we will introduce our special guest. So, just to let everybody know, All Things Fantasy Grounds talk show is meant to teach and help, but the opinions stated by the three of us on the show tonight are not those of Smiteworks USA, LLC, or Fantasy Grounds. And our subject is XML. Our special guest tonight is Geo Quester. Welcome, Geo. How are you?
I am doing fantabulous this evening.
Excellent. So, as we begin, why don't we tell, I'm sure almost everybody who's watching must know already, but for those that don't, perhaps, tell everyone who you are and what you do and what your whole deal is with Fantasy Grounds and everything.
Hi, my name is Jeff, or GeoQuester, or Mr. Game Master, or lately it has been the Renaissance man of role-playing games. And my deal is I've been a game designer for almost 15, almost 20 years at this point, a professional game designer. I've been a game master since the 81 and been gaming since the late 70s. So I'm an old motherfucker. Maybe not as old as Rob, but I am old.
Hello.
I'm also a streamer. You can find me on twitch.tv/GeoQuester. You can also find me on my website, geoquestergaming.com. Twitter, it's @GeoQuester. And I am the uglier half of the GeoQuester gaming family. Those of you who watched the Crypts of Kellamvor, nicknamed the Cock Stream, by the way, I am not a family-friendly person, so I apologize now. But of course, this is Rob's, show, so therefore, I don't think I really have to worry about that. But the other half of me is the Mistress of Darkness herself, is the Susie Q, and she ran her first Fantasy Grounds game today. She's run many, many games in the past, and she plays in Rob's, Tomb of Annihilation game on Friday nights. And yeah, tonight was her first night GMing in Fantasy Grounds, so that was a lot of fun. And you guys probably saw me going absolutely bugfuck bananas as I had to backseat DM with her and tried not to jump up and push her out of the way and click on things for her.
Funny. And for those of you that know Susie, she will actually be joining us here on All Things Fantasy Grounds talk show on June 3rd for the FG Gamer Girls show. So Susie and a lot of other female gamers, specifically Fantasy Grounds female gamers, will be here to talk about all things vagina, I guess. All things that Leroon and I don't know about because we're men, and we're going to find out what they have to say. So that should be pretty fun. So tonight's subject is XML, and I know before we got started, when we were just talking, the three of us before the show, we said that we were going to ask you, Geo, what is your methodology for XML regarding Fantasy Grounds, and then just let you go nuts with what you want to show us. So I'm going to show people your screen.
Okay.
And then you can do what you must do.
Alrighty. Well, before I get into my methodology, first of all, as we were discussing earlier, I could go on for 12 hours and talk about XML and not even scratch the surface of how to program an XML. So we aren't going to give you a comprehensive guide in coding in XML with Fantasy Grounds. There is a wiki for that, which you can go to. I don't have the link right off the top of my head. I'll have to ask Rob to go retrieve that while I, mumble and ramble.
I'm on it.
Okay.
Or Lightroom, all right, thank you. But there is a wiki for this, and you can utilize the wiki. It is not 100% accurate, but it does it does what it needs to do. It teaches you the basics. If you can code in CSS, if you can code in HTML, then you can code in XML. They're all basic markup languages that are used to make websites. They're used to make basic databases that you can do. You can do lookups of specific information by using tags. That is what XML is. But what I thought would be fun for us to see today would be this. This is my methodology on how I like to do my things.
All right.
So this is a little slideshow presentation that I made, which, by the way, if anybody else wants to use this program, it is called Prezi. It is free. It is online. It's called Prezi, Prezi.com. You can go on over there and just go ahead and play around. You'll find a lot of this kind of stuff on my website as well. I use a lot of Prezi presentations for things like Legends and Lore.
Cool.
All right, so XML coding in Fantasy Grounds. All right, so we're going to get started. All right, there is 3 basic things that I always ask myself, and I ask my clients when they hire me to do a module. Is number 1, who is it for? Is this going to be for a player? Is this for a game master? Is this for both? Who is this for? Number 2, what do I need to complete the module? Do I need graphics? Do I need a lot of text? Do I need some sort of funky code that, only exists in, Doug Davison's mind and maybe on a piece of toilet paper or a napkin someplace? I got to find, what do I honestly need for it? And then last but not least, choosing your weapon. How do you want to code in Fantasy Grounds? And there's multiple ways to do it. All right, so the first thing we're going to talk about is what our audience is going to be. Who are we coding for? Who is it for? Now, ladies and gentlemen, by all means, go ahead and ask questions while we're going through each one of these topics. This is meant to be kind of a Q&A. I'm going to throw things out there. Go ahead and ask myself or Rob or Laren, any of us a question. I'm sure any of the 3 of us can answer most of these questions for you.
Yeah, if you have questions, guys, just type them in the chat, and we'll stop at an appropriate mid-breath and try to answer your questions for you.
Definitely. It also gives me an opportunity to drink a cup of coffee or something so I can, keep my throat going. But, okay, so during my planning phase, and there's always a planning phase, you need to answer one simple question. Who is the module being made for? When you answer that question and how you answer that question is going to show you what tools you need for the rest of the process. And it's going to save you loads of time and effort all the way down the line. So now, if we're going to make a player's module, player modules are any modules that are accessible on the table at any time. And these include house rules. Now, when I say modules that are accessible at any time, this also includes the offline, quote unquote, the offline version of creating a module. Those are called client modules. You can use those in things like the character creation menu on Fantasy Grounds. Not all modules are created so you can use them there. But this is a great way to do those, is you make player modules. So one of those is house rules. So if you have things like optional rules like for flanking or inspiration points, or you need to drink a shot before you roll your attack roll, this is a place to put it. The second one is anything that's going to be character creation based. So players' handbooks, spell books, anything like that. Though this is a perfect location to do those. Fidget modules. Now, a fidget module, as anybody who's been on a table for any amount of time knows, that paying attention to Fantasy Grounds is actually super easy. It's actually a hell of a lot easier to play a game online when you have a virtual tabletop than it is to play a game person to person, like face to face, like across the kitchen table. And because there's so much extra bullshit going on around a kitchen table, you kind of have to really pay attention. When you're in Fantasy Grounds or any other programming that may be out there, and you have push to talk and you're doing that kind of stuff,
bits.
You're really
Thanks for
you
the
only
bits.
pay attention to what is actually being kind of thrown in your face. So fidget modules are anything that the players can goof around with in the background without disturbing the game. And then finally, things like pre-made character modules is another good one that will be a player-only style module. If you have one-shot games that you play on a regular basis or you run on a regular basis, throwing together a pre-made character module is probably one of the most handy things to have at your table. I think, Rob, you've got one on your table, don't you?
I do.
Yeah, I have one for my games. I mean, Layron, I'm sure you have one for your games. I mean, you've probably made about 1,000 freaking characters at this point. So I'm sure you guys have all zipped them up and put them together. So that's what player modules are. The next one we're going to talk about is the GM-only style modules. Now, Game Master-only modules are only acceptable by the owner of the table. These are considered to be hidden behind the Game Master's screen from all the players. The players can't see these at all.
Cheerbits in the stream. Thanks for the cheerbits.
Now, these would include things like adventure modules, monsters and NPC books, campaign notes, and anything else that's going to be a rule system for hidden objects, conditions, or other effects that are not typically visible to the players. All right, last but not least, here is modules for both of you. Now, these modules are only available on the table, and they're a little bit rarer than the other kinds. You can't use them in your character creation tables like offline. They're only on a live table, but these help facilitate better or faster gameplay. Now, things like coding modules. Now, Rob knows all about these. Coding modules. These make your life a shit ton simpler and easier in the long run if you have a coding module available to you. And then the other types, and Layron and I have talked about these, is token or image modules, where you load separate modules that help lower the resources that are used in your Fantasy Grounds table. Now, notice there's a little asterisk next to that.
Cheerbits.
Note, Fantasy Grounds
in
has
the
an
stream.
active
Thanks for
memory
the
load of
cheerbits.
3 megabytes. If your module, minus images and tokens, is close to or greater than this, your game will lag and possibly cause players to disconnect. So, for example, when the player's handbook loads and people start dropping off your table, there's too many resources being loaded into your table, or they are trying to load too many resources at once and it kicks them. This happens all the time, and the easiest thing to do is start pulling some of those images
in the stream.
out
Thanks for the
of those
cheerbits.
modules and have them text only. Do we have any questions yet?
Not that I can see.
No questions. Somebody did make a comment. If Susie Q is sending players naughty DMs during a game, doesn't that count as BS and distracting?
Only if you allow it to be distracting. However, you don't know naughty until you've found her website that is $4.95 a membership. So
And Fireheart says that FG Unity will address the memory of the 3 megabyte load, which is true. So
oh my God, you just made Unity come back. Like, you pushed it back 3 months just by mentioning that.
Yeah, well, I didn't do it. It was his Fireheart.
I know. It was your. Yep. Thank you so much for that. Yep. Pushed it back 3 months.
3 months.
It's a running joke.
Yep. So all right. So Rob.
Yeah.
Speaking of modules and different kinds of modules to give away,
yes,
we have my first giveaway.
Oh, snap.
My first giveaway was what?
Your first giveaway, as I have here in my notes, is the Comprehensive Equipment Manual FG module, not even available for regular consumption at this time.
Correct. Now, what I need from the people who are going to be in on this is I need their email address, and so I can send it to the publisher. Now, the publisher gave me 100% rights to give away one and only one copy of the platinum selling Comprehensive Equipment Manual on DM's Guild, and you'll be getting the Fantasy Grounds module for it. I do not make a single dime off of this, so by all means, everybody go out and buy it as much as you want. Braithwaite Productions is very nice to allowing me to stream the coding aspect of it, and B is giving it away. So, but they need to have the person's email address that they use on DM's Guild, so that way they can send it to them when it becomes uploaded and available. Considering he just handed me 16 pages yesterday, I have a little bit more coding to do on it.
All right, so if you want to enter to win a copy of that, join the keyword raffle in the chat. Keyword is equipment, so exclamation equipment. And if you win, we will have you give your email to me so I can get it to Geo so that you can get a copy of this. So that's awesome. So we'll run a 5-minute timer on that, 4.5 minutes left. And when that runs out, I'll let everybody know.
Matter of fact, while we're talking about that one, here, why don't I pop over to my Fantasy Grounds table for a second? And let's open this bad boy up and take a look at it real quick, shall we? All right, so this is an idea of what it means to be coding in XML versus utilizing other things, which we'll talk about in a little bit during resources and other stuff. This thing is flipping huge. It's over 60,000 lines of code. Now, for all intents and purposes, 60,000 lines of code is bigger than the player's handbook. The Fantasy Grounds module done by Smiteworks for the player's handbook for 5th edition is, if I remember correctly, 54,000 lines of code, and ends up being something like, and I'm just talking about the code, the XML program itself. I'm not talking about the images or anything else. That specific code is, I believe it was 2.8 or 3.8 megabytes in size for that one file. Now, if you think that's all a text file for the most part, that's flipping huge. It's big. That's why it takes so much time for you to load the player's handbook onto a table. The comprehensive equipment manual is bigger than that and comes in at a smaller megabyte size because it is all done by hand. There is no parsing. There is nothing else that goes into it. It is all coded by hand. I do utilize the Fantasy Grounds tabletop just to lay out items. But other than that, the over 2,000 items that are in this book, just as a note, over 2,000 items, are all coded by hand. And it comes in at 1.5 megabytes.
Damn.
Yeah, that's a big difference between a parse versus an XML program, is doing stuff like that. Now, people may be wondering, okay, how cheesy is this going to look? Okay, so here's some adventuring gear. All right, here's our adventuring gear table. Ooh, pretty. It's all, done up nice. But this is the true test. Now, you go over to the inventory section. You're in equipment packs. We'll grab the Arcanist pack. And when you drag and drop an equipment pack and it actually labels out all of your gear for you, that's when you know that you have a good thing, because it actually matches the player's handbook perfectly. Trust me, it took me a while to do it. Each one of those packs, by the way, for each one of those items, it is 12 lines of code per item in the inventory. Just saying.
Oh
Yeah. It's when people get in there. I mean, if you know XML and you've worked with it, it won't freak you out. But when you go in there and look at just the simplest thing and realize that in order to make one thing on a line, it takes 12 lines of code, it'll blow you away. But it is really cool what you can do.
Oh, yeah. I mean, like, all right, for example, I have an example document opened up over here right now. I just exported 3 items, an abacus, a battle axe, and a breastplate. Okay, so there are 3 different kinds of items. We know that one's a weapon, one's an armor, and one is a adventuring gear. But as you can see, when you export it directly from Fantasy Grounds into a module, it gives you this little items window. Nothing special, nothing cool, nothing good. Now, if you do it in XML, that's what it looks like.
Right.
Where you have lists that you can collapse, that you can sort, you can do all sorts of stuff like that. Your weapons come up looking like this. Oh, which, by the way, this is one of the weapons tables from the Comprehensive Equipment Manual. Yeah, I'm still scrolling, guys. Yeah, still scrolling. Yeah, there I am, still scrolling. Oh, there we go. I finally reached the bottom. you start doing things like armor. I mean, that's the kind of stuff that you look at when you start doing XML code versus just exporting. But that's enough of that. We'll get back into that stuff later.
Let's see how we're doing on the timer for the contest. Oh snap! Oh, I got there right at the second it ended. All right, let's draw us a winner. So the winner of the comprehensive equipment Fantasy Grounds module is Half Front. Bam. No, Half Front, not Half Front, because there would be two F's in it. Anyway, congratulations to Half Front. Nice job, and he is a follower, so good on that. Because if you're not a follower and you win a contest, I yell at you. So go ahead, Halfront, PM me in Discord and give me your Dungeon Masters Guild email so I can get that to Geo. And if you do not have a Dungeon Masters Guild email, just go to dungeonmastersguild.com, sign up, get an email, and then we will be able to send you that Fantasy Grounds module through the guild, which means even though you're getting it for free, all future updates will be given to you and so forth, so it's good. So congrats on that. All right.
Ooh, okay. Teal'c has a question.
Oh, yeah, go for it.
Okay. Is there any way to code an XML to make a versatile weapons prompt for one-handed and two-handed weapons as opposed to having to create two separate attack entries? Yes and no.
Leroon might have something to say about that.
You can do it, and you utilize powers for it, and it actually makes it easier to do.
It's funny he says that. I'm working on something like that right now.
Oh,
okay. That's not a secret. That's not a secret, is it, Leroon? We can talk about that.
I'm actually making it for everybody. So
yeah, Leroon is making a module right now where all versatile weapons, and I think there's only 6 of them, is what you said.
Yeah.
Will be entered as items so that you can drag onto your sheet battle axe one-handed, battle axe two-handed, that kind of a thing. So
but it won't look as clean.
It'll all be done for you. You won't have to go do any extra. Part of the whole reason that any of the 3 of us and other people besides us do this is to make everyone's life easier, right? So that's what that's about.
Yep.
Awesome. Very cool.
So Teal'c,
as I said, yes. You can do it.
What it ends up happening is you'll have 2 versions of the weapon on your character sheet, and you'll just use one or the other. And if you're hotkey and stuff down below, you would just do both of them and then choose, like, oh, I've got my shield now, so I'll just use the one-handed version. And if I'm going to throw my shield down and use 2 hands, then you can switch back and forth, and it makes it a lot easier. What most people in Fantasy Grounds who don't have these codes done for them is they do that themselves manually. They just drag another, they change the name of one of their weapons to offhand or versatile or two-handed, and then they drag another one on there so it's a different instance of it, and then they just change the code within the weapon. That's usually what most people do. Pain in the ass.
McClancy has a question.
How about coding for items that have ongoing checks to see if something happens on your turn, like a cursed item that rolls a d6, have curse effect applied that turn? Asking for a friend. I know what friend you're asking for. Okay, I got it. Not in its current iteration.
No. Fantasy Grounds cannot check whose turn it is.
It can't check by keyword.
Yeah, and it doesn't even really know whose turn it is attached to when you're rolling dice. So, yeah, that would not actually be possible. There's a lot of things that aren't really possible, but this...
Speaking of things that aren't possible, I have a super secret giveaway that I didn't even tell you guys.
Oh, my God.
Oh, my God. Oh, my God. And
Whoa.
The first person who puts this in chat, okay, and answers this properly in chat, wait.
Before you say what it is, are we eligible? Am I eligible for this?
You know what? No. You
Okay.
and Leroon are not eligible for this.
Damn it. Okay, go ahead.
Well, you'll get the stuff anyway, because I'll give you guys that stuff anyway. But you will get a free copy of the Crypts of Kelemvor map that I made for tonight's stream that we did for our module of the week that Susie Q ran.
Cool.
I will give you the free map that I made. If the first person who puts this into chat, if you can tell me what is the only tab in Fantasy Grounds that cannot be exported or coded.
Ooh, I know.
Oh
yeah, that's easy.
That's why you two aren't allowed.
Plus, we're 10 seconds ahead.
Yeah, that's true. That's true too. Oh shit!
Oh, bam! Notes. Bam! There it is.
Yep, Teal got it. All right, so I'll send it over to Rob, and he'll just send you when you send him your DMs Guild stuff. He'll just send you the map as well.
Pretty sure he's taken some of our classes too.
Yeah, so Teal, just make sure you PM me your email in Discord, and here's the Discord link for you and anybody who doesn't have it already. Anybody who's watching that's not on my Discord, how dare you? Just the other night he says he took class. Okay, good. Congrats on that. That's funny. That was a good question. That was an excellent question.
Yeah, it was.
I'm always trying to come up with I'm always trying to come up with like Fantasy Grounds trivia questions. That was an excellent one. I wouldn't have thought of that.
Okay. This doesn't have any reward for it other than the fact that everybody knows it, and you can squeeze your nipples and sigh heartily on this one. What is the only rule set that is fully codable in Fantasy Grounds?
Well, that's easy too.
Don't worry.
I'm squeezing now. Oh, shit.
Ebenezer Squeezer.
Yeah.
Somebody's got to put that in there right away.
I know what it is, I think, but I'm not sure.
I mean, the three of us are in a group together. You can type it into our group, and I'll see it.
Oh, let's see if I can do that here.
We can see your screen, Rob.
Oh yeah, duh. Shit. Anybody would have got that anyway. Anybody that tried to answer, they would have got it. We can see your screen, Rob. Oh my God.
Next question, Gio.
All right. So the follow-up to that one is there is one rule set that the only place you can get any Fantasy Grounds code in it is only the extra tabs at the top. It uses only 2 of the extra little itty-bitty buttons at the top of Fantasy Grounds.
Wait, say that again now?
There is one rule set that only uses the 2 itty-bitty buttons at the top for all coding effects.
The itty bitty buttons at the top. Oh, you mean player or readable or player? You talk about those buttons?
I'm talking about the ones that are the itty bitty ones here. I'll flip over.
Yeah, because I can know what you're talking about here.
Those 8 right up there in the corner, top right corner.
Oh, yeah.
There's a rule set that only uses 2 there?
Yep. And it's actually the only thing they use. You can't code anything anywhere else except there. You could actually do the entire rule set only using 2 buttons.
Yeah, I bet it's is it Core RPG?
Nope, not Core, because Core you can still code on a character sheet. It's not Savage Worlds, you can code on a character sheet.
Is it one of the ones that comes with, or is it an extra buy?
Now that's just cheating.
Well, I don't know. I mean, I have
How about this? How about this? Yes, it does come with.
Okay, so everybody could know this.
Yes, everybody could know this. Everybody has access to it.
Okay. It's got to be one I never use. I don't know. I give up. I'm out. So, Core RPG, Savage Worlds,
Pathfinder.
Oh, really? Oh. Pathfinder?
Really?
Pathfinder and and 3rd edition were all based around the modifiers button and the condition effect button. Oh. Everything. You can code the entire thing from racial traits all the way straight through to whatever spell you want to utilize, all just using those 2 screens.
Well, it makes sense now.
Yep. And there is no such thing as a coding effect when it comes to your spells. Pathfinder, or 3rd edition. Pretty silly when you think that the whole reason that there's a Fantasy Grounds is because of 3rd edition. And
Yeah,
you get to
that's
use that up there.
That is pretty funny.
That's interesting. Good trivia.
Yeah,
Geo
good
with
trivia.
the obscure knowledge. I love it.
I know. As I said, I've been for Fantasy Grounds usage. I've been using it since its beta test launch. I was a designer for, at the time, I was designing games for Wizards of the Coast in Sword and Sorcery Studios back in the early 2000s. And at the time, there was this guy who was wandering around Gen Con. And he goes, hey, and I was sitting at the Goodman Games booth at the time signing copies of Blackmore. And he goes, hey, you make games? I go, yeah. He goes, have you ever played on a virtual tabletop? I go, yeah, I've used WebRPG, I've used OpenRPG, I've used a couple of the other ones. Why? He goes, how would you like to try one that has the same feel as playing on a tabletop, but on your computer instead? Right down to the rolling of dice. And I went, I'm game. How much is it going to cost me? And he goes, nope, here. And he handed me a beta key.
Cheerbits in the stream. Thanks
and
for the
I've been
cheerbits.
using it since then.
So
yeah,
that was
I've
in
been
like
using it for
2004 or something, or 2003 even maybe.
It was like 2003, I think, is when I got it.
I got a question for you, Gio.
Mm-hmm.
Did you happen to meet Anna B. Meyer at that time? She's the artist that did the Midgard maps.
Yep. I do not recall.
Okay.
I cannot remember if I have met her or not. I've met a lot of people in my days, and as Rob is so wont to say, he can't remember like anything past like 5 minutes ago. Like
I don't remember what I said at the beginning of the show.
Exactly. I don't remember what I had for breakfast. Don't ask me what I did almost 20 years ago, because I had only 2 kids at that point in time. So now I have 4.
Yeah, it's funny. A lot of people, all those codings I did, a lot of people think that my reason for doing that was to get rich and famous. No, I did it because I couldn't remember. And I thought, you know what? I'm just going to, I was doing them as we were playing. Like 2 years ago, we were, everybody hold on, we need a code for that. And I thought, I'm never going to remember any of these. Let me just do them all. And then I thought, wait a minute, I'll just make it available. But the whole reason I even did that is because I have no memory. I can't remember shit past 5 minutes.
Exactly. Same thing.
It's amazing I can even like get through a game like as a DM. I mean, as a player, you really don't have to remember anything, but as a DM, it's very lucky if I can remember. Especially like for the Friday game, we haven't played for 2 weeks in a row. So next Friday or this coming Friday, I'm literally gonna have to watch the last 10 minutes of the last game, or else I won't know what's going on.
Yeah. I get you on that one.
Yeah.
All right. So back into our thingy. All right. So next we're going to talk about resources. What resources are available to us? And this answers the question, what do I need to get started? Now, whether you're building a module made of house rules or you're converting your favorite tabletop game into Fantasy Grounds, there's always going to be a few things you're going to need first. And your first thing is going to be whether you're going to be using a PDF or a hard copy. So what are we doing? We're going to do a PDF first. Things to remember, and this is the most important thing. Number 1, own the product. Never, ever, ever use, distribute, or accept pirated material from any source. Images. If your images are from a PDF, they're perhaps the easiest thing to pull out of it, which we'll talk about some other resources here in a second to pull stuff out of a module. Text. Now, if your PDF is unlocked, you're on easy street. If it isn't, crack your knuckles, put on a few pots of coffee, and start going for it, because you're going to be in for a long haul. Rob, have you ever had to retype a PDF?
No, as a matter of fact, I wouldn't do it. If that was what I needed to do, I just wouldn't do it, because that's insane.
Yeah,
and I'm imagining when you get to hardback, it's going to be much the same situation as you got to type all that stuff in. Yeah.
Oh my God, yes. Oh my God, yes. Well, I had a client who actually asked me to purchase a module. They gave me the money for it, and they go, here, I want this converted. Can you do this for me? It was a fan conversion, is what it was. And They had a copy of it. They proved it to me that they had a copy of it. They gave me the money so I could purchase a copy of it, and they wanted it for their table, but they didn't have the chutzpah to be able to put it onto their table. And they wanted me to do it for them, and they were going to pay me to do it. And I was like, all right, fine, whatever, no big deal. And then I found out that PDF was locked, and the publisher was not willing to unlock. And I was like, motherfucker, that's a 250-page module. I got to type by hand, motherfucker.
Yeah, so along those same lines, we signed NDA, so I cannot give the name of it. But back in January, a group of us played the next adventure that comes out by Wizards of the Coast, which comes out in September, I think. And it was in a lock. We got the PDF, but it was locked because, of course, right? So Schmo was on like a business trip or was going to be in a hotel for 2 weeks. So he didn't do the entire thing, but he did enough for the encounters and the maps and for us to be able to play. And he made the whole Fantasy Grounds module by literally reading it and typing it because it was locked and he couldn't cut and paste. So it was insane.
Yeah.
But, yeah,
which actually leads me to the next point on this one too. No hacks. Never try to hack a protected PDF. If you do so without permission of the company, you are in violation of copyright laws in certain parts of the world.
Yes.
And there are certain companies like Wizards who will sue your ass blind.
Yeah,
And
we even asked
usually
about
sucks.
that. Yeah, we asked about that too. We asked if we could do what we were going to, even though we didn't really need to ask. We did ask because you're so paranoid. And they said, "Oh yeah, that's fine as long as you don't." The only thing they were concerned about is obviously don't. We recorded the sessions, but we can't upload them until the book comes out. But that's part of the NDA anyway. You're not even supposed to talk about what it is or what the subject is or any of that stuff. You can't say anything.
I have no idea what that is. No, I do not know what you're talking about, Rob.
No,
Let's
you
continue.
don't know.
I don't know.
I don't know. All right, so hard copy. All right, here's the question. When the hell would I ever use a heavy paperback copy of a book? Answer, when those games were produced before the advent of oh my God, I misspelled something. Portable document format. Not portal documents. No, they don't make holes in your desk. Well, actually, they do if you drop them hard enough, but PDFs. So, warm up your fingers. There is no easy way to convert a hard copy to an electronic format. But if you're willing to make a Fantasy Grounds module out of something that is only found in hardback, that means you're doing this out of a labor of love. And doesn't your love deserve all of your attention that you can possibly heap on it? Speaking of which, happy Mother's Day, ladies. Happy Mother's Day, honey.
I got around it a little bit, Gio.
Happy Mother's Day, you mothers.
So I don't use OCR or anything like that. I actually read a small book, not a large one like that, to myself, which was really annoying. And I had the Dragon dictation software do it for me. But I had to train it for several months before I could do that.
Oh yeah, the dragon voice, yeah.
Yeah, any of the speech recognition programs trying to convert any sort of role-playing game is fucking hilarious. It's like trying to type a role-playing game on your phone. Autocorrect up the wazoo.
Right. I actually had it read, because the newer version, you can actually have it read everything ahead of time. And so I did all that. So it knows a ton about Forgotten Realms now. It knows a ton about custom stuff that I've done.
Awesome.
A lot of people can actually type faster than they can read out loud, which is funny.
True.
McClancy said it doesn't matter. Rob can sign any NDAs because he can't remember shit anyway.
Yeah, once again, goldfish boy. He doesn't remember shit.
Yeah, I swim around and I look out again and I'm like, who are all those people that just fed me?
Exactly. Don't overfeed you.
Yeah, they overfeed me and I don't remember. I just keep eating.
So, Rob, do you remember that thing we were talking about last week?
Yeah, sure. Remember?
I've learned not to do that anymore.
See, this is why Rob streams, so he has recorded messages of everything.
I have evidence that I even ever played D&D. Like I don't. It's not that bad. I just don't remember certain details about stuff. I remember important things.
All right.
That's been used.
Since
That's
we're-
been used against me, by the way, by girlfriends. Oh, so that's not important? Oh, fuck.
I didn't know your inflatable doll could talk.
Yeah. It's got a whole voice box and everything. It's got 2
You got
boxes.
the upgraded one, didn't you? You took
I
all
did.
of your DM's Guild money and you got the new upgraded one from Japan that can talk back.
I'm gonna just tell you something. It's not like I haven't been on that website looking. So okay.
Yeah, well, that's not a surprise.
You see a 2020 show about the real doll, and then you're like, well, let me just check it out. But no.
Yeah, let me. Come on, everybody did it. Come on, we're all curious to find out.
Yep.
So, all right. Anyway, back to speaking of this kind of stuff. Required software. In addition to Fantasy Grounds, you're going to need a few things. Look at that. Ooh, fancy. I'm just going to go over this really, really quick. Okay, so Adobe Photoshop or GIMP are probably the 2 easiest to get a hold of. GIMP is a free program that can do image manipulation of any kind. There are some drawbacks to it. One of those being the learning curve on it can be a little steep sometimes, but there are plenty of videos out there you can watch. Photoshop is the best overall utility because there is so many different things you can do. But it is, you got to pay for it. I mean, that's about the best way. Once again, do not use hacked or freeware, quote unquote, to get around these licenses, because that's no bueno. Now, when you're manipulating the images for Fantasy Grounds, now this is the important information. Table dimensions for Fantasy Grounds are roughly 1170 by 760 pixels. So if you're going to be doing things like player handouts, try to keep it under those sizes. That way the players can see it and it fits on a screen easily. I typically don't go over 1,000 wide or 700 tall, just for the same reason. So that way everything loads nicely. Maps, even though any size map will pretty much work, quote unquote, any size. There's air quotes around that, please. Anything with a 50 by 50 pixel grid works best without loss of quality. And then your file types for images and tokens. Images and maps are typically JPEG files, and your tokens and logos are typically PNG files. And they're PNGs just to preserve any sort of transparency that's going to be in the background. Though if you are going to do, for example, like square tokens or square pogs or that kind of thing, you can actually make it into a JPEG file. I've found for some reason that PNG files tend to actually be slightly smaller than JPEG files. Mm-hmm. So it works a little bit nicer.
Along those points of discussion for the dimensions too, you said that you try not to go over 1,000 wide by 700 high, and actually those of us that develop for Fantasy Grounds, they make us stay within those ranges. Like you can't turn in images that are more than 1,000 wide or 700 high, unless it is a map, and then you can go to 2048 by 2048. I think is the max they want. Now, if you go and open up like Princes of the Apocalypse and look at one of those dungeons, those are like 5,000, whatever, but that's a special case. But if you are making modules, and I think their reasoning is not so much for look, but more for memory and size, they want you to keep those under 1,000 by 700. And that also is, of course, because if you open it, it'll fit on the desktop, and users won't have to shrink it or manipulate it. It'll just be the picture.
Exactly. Now is a good time to talk about the extra pixel or two for grid lines. Well, if you have a map that is done properly and with the idea of a virtual tabletop in mind, it should already be that way.
Yes.
You shouldn't have to worry about it.
I can't tell you the number of emails that I've had to send to authors who asked me to convert something for them, saying, can I please have the good maps? And they're like, well, those are the good maps. And I'm like, oh no. And but a lot of people that write adventures for PDFs and who are thinking in their head, oh, I'm going to put a map in here so that the DM can see it. Maybe they want to draw it on a battle map, or but they don't actually need the map itself except for reference. They don't have in mind, like, I need this to be, 50 by 50 pixels, evenly spaced with no grid lines so that people can use it in Fantasy Grounds. That's not what they're thinking. So if you're converting a module from something that isn't something you're making yourself, you might run into this, and you have to kind of manipulate the size of the map and grid it out till it works for you and stuff like that. But that's what Photoshop and GIMP are for.
Yes, exactly. Now, the other question was, what about the full page images for reference manuals and such like that? So I just went back over to my Fantasy Grounds because I did exactly that for the comprehensive equipment manual, was do full page. And honestly, you want to stay around 560 wide. Whatever 560 wide would be for that individual piece is where you want to keep it. If you try to do more than that, then it will automatically scale down. The standard reference window right here is, I do believe, let me think, I think it's 450. So if you try to, when you scale up by clicking on the, the flyout button, you can actually get it to be its full size. But that's about it. You don't want to go any bigger or than that. Honestly, you really don't, or else it's gonna really hurt your butt. So, like, for example, see, there's just the cover image by itself, and it matches in size.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's the same size as the
same size. So, but yeah, that's and then when you're doing the XML coding, you have to know your exact dimensions for your images in order to put it in properly. And if you don't do it right, it will look really fucked up. So definitely make sure that you're checking file sizes at all times when you try to do a reference manual.
And just a reminder to everybody listening and watching later on YouTube that, like we said before, this could be a 12-hour course or even longer on how to do all this stuff. We're just giving you kind of a basic rundown. But as far as reference manuals go, that is a whole other ballgame that is quite intricate and can get crazy with the imaging and even putting pins on images in the reference manual. And I mean, it just gets nuts. Call Zacchaeus at home would be my advice on that one. I'm just kidding.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, when you're doing the XML to put a pin on an image, you actually have to know the coordinates on the image by pixel.
Yeah. Yeah. It's nuts.
Yeah.
Yikes.
That's the greatest thing about Fantasy Grounds itself, exporting things directly from Fantasy Grounds into a module, is that you don't have to know all that. You can just pin the map and it's done. But if you're writing it in XML, you have to know the coordinates of the image and then what XY axis the pin goes on. Oh, it's nuts. It's just crazy.
A little trig comes into play, it looks like.
Yeah.
Yeah, it does. It does.
Whip out your, what do they call that?
My slide ruler.
Yeah, slide ruler.
My protractor. Okay, the next thing is for text. Now, there is a shit ton of free programs you can use out there. What you use all depends on the size of the modules you're attempting to code in XML. Notepad++ is absolutely fantastic for anything that's going to be half a megabyte or smaller. After that, it begins to get a little laggy. You got to open something or scroll or what have you, and it just jerks you around. But Notepad++ comes with a markup language already inside it to color code your XML. So all of your tags will be coded, and it's actually a really very easy way of doing things. Rob, you use Notepad++, don't you?
I do use Notepad++, yes.
Yeah, there's lots of hotkeys and shortcuts and stuff like that.
The greatest thing about Notepad++ for me is you end up getting a lot of these PDFs that have ligatures in them or extra spacing or different, whatever the hell it might be. And Notepad++ will allow you to write macros and stack macros so that you can build something. Like I'll paste a bit of text from a PDF in Notepad++, hit a macro that I have, and that macro will take out double spacing, change all the ligatures like the FLs, the FFs, and FIs that don't work, and change those to what they should be. Remove all the carriage returns, and copy it into the what's it called? When you copy something in clipboard, it does all that with one key, and then I switch over to Fantasy Grounds and paste it, and then I just have to go through and format it with either italics or bolding, or because that stuff doesn't carry over. So it does save a lot of time, but it took me about, I've been converting stuff for a couple years, but I would say only in the last 6 to 8 months have I gotten really good at it, and knowing all my things that I like to do and the structure I like to set up in advance and do all these steps that I take personally that other people might do differently. But Notepad++, if I didn't have that, I might not even do this, because it really does save you a lot of aggravation.
It does. It does indeed. Sublime Text 3. Now, this is for things that are going to be greater than 0.5 meg in size. And this is really good for things like player's guides or converting like DMG, that kind of stuff. That is also really good. The markup isn't as concise as Notepad++, but it does have one that's already in there. It has all the same functionality as Notepad++. And it's pretty good for, like, once again, copying, pasting text, like large blocks of it all at once. Not a big problem with that at all. Now, this is the one that I've been using a lot lately, because Visual Studio, and there's a free version of this. You can get, there's a community version of it. There is a paid version of it. I used Visual Studio to start programming in C#, and it has a lot of, which is an entirely different topic. We'll talk about that probably in a little while when I get quote unquote ambushed. But it's really good because it has a built-in debugger. So therefore, if you miss, and let me tell you, when you get 60,000 plus lines of code and you miss one tag, Fantasy Grounds screams at you and wants to crash. So you're constantly testing and retesting and opening and closing modules in Fantasy Grounds. And if you want to have a more streamlined idea of how to do your XML using Visual Studio, which already has an XML coder in it, and it is phenomenal, and you can teach it specifically. I taught my Visual Studio all of the code that Fantasy Grounds specifically uses. So all I have to do is type 2 letters, and it puts in a begin and end tag for whatever I want, whenever I want it, and with just a couple of keystrokes. And it closes everything automatically for me. There's a debugging window along the side where I can go, okay, I want this to be this way, I want that to be that way, and it tells me whether something's fucked up or not inside it. But it sucks at converting PDF to text. It's great for the code. It sucks for everything else. So I use Sublime 3 in order to get the PDF to text. And then I use Visual Studio to take the text to make it into code.
There's probably a good reason for that. Adobe versus Microsoft, maybe?
Yeah, it is. It's Adobe versus Microsoft. Adobe has their own program that utilizes the same basic program as Visual Studio and everything like that, with bells and whistles and all sorts of stuff that you can do. And you can export PDF directly into it. But it is a paid program, and it comes as part of the suite, the CC suite. So I did not include it in this. I'm trying to keep as low cost as possible for everybody.
Question: anyone know about Eclipse? If that's XML friendly, I've never heard of it, so
I haven't ever used it either, so I couldn't.
I don't know about Eclipse either. I've never heard of it.
Yep, Visual Studio Community. That's exactly what I use. Is Visual Studio Community. All right, now this is where the things that we've come up to so far are all beginning to build onto each other. So we wanted to know who our audience is going to be. We wanted to know what programs we're going to be utilizing, and this is why. And now we're getting into the XML side of stuff. All Fantasy Grounds modules contain the following files: a definition XML file, which tells the program when you open this module what rule set it goes to, what the name of the module is going to be, and who the author of the module is. That's all it tells you. It's a very small XML file. It's only, I think, a total of
like 5 or 6 lines. Yeah, it's just really
small. It's really small. It's really small. Once you include like the root lines and the other lines about FG and what version of FG you're using. Which, by the way, if you're going to code an FG, At the moment, because there have been so many rapid developments in, it's like we're up to 3.3.5 now is the live. Yeah, try to only code for 3.3 or 3.0. Go backwards a couple of steps. Then your code will work with whatever is coming out, because the most current live version may not always be the most stable version, as we see with like week after week we get new updates. So they're doing new stuff to it. So just make sure to step back a couple of versions so that way you are backwards compatible. The next thing is a thumbnail PNG, which goes right into your Fantasy Grounds. It's that little picture that pops up right next to the module. And then there's two optionals that go into your Fantasy Grounds file, which is going to be the images folder and tokens folder. If you don't have any images, don't worry about it. If you don't have tokens, don't worry about it. Now, there's a third program that's in there. It's another XML file, and this is where the meat and potatoes of it is. And that depends on what kind of module you're making. This is why, once again, we have gone through all these steps. They sound tedious, but you have to do it. There is the client.xml, which is for players. You can use it anywhere on a live or on a offline table. So you can use it anywhere. So, for example, the not really complete Tome of Spells, which we'll get to a little bit later. That isn't done as a client, so that way you could do a character creation offline, and you could use all those kinds of things there and on a live table. Common.xml. Now these are a player or GM module equally. They're only usable on a live table. So a GM has to open a table. He has to have this loaded in and ready for you to go and have it available to you. And then finally, there's the db.xml, which is a GM-only module. When you open the modules in Fantasy Ground and you go down to your library, these are the ones that have the big red X's on them that only the Game Master can touch. That's where these come from.
I have a question.
Yes.
I know I have never seen a common.xml. What would be a reason that someone would have, or why did they invent that so that you could only use the module when you're on a live table? What would be the thinking behind that?
To be honest, okay, common.xml, actually, when you go to export from Fantasy Grounds and you click on, let's go over to Fantasy Grounds. Hey, let's go on over here. Let's go to the export window. Let's go on over to the export window, shall we? Okay. Now, when you see the read-only module, and you see the player module, when both of those are checkmarked, that is a common.
Okay.
All right. So whenever you export, and it looks like that, that makes a common.xml file. If it's just a player module, depending on how you have your Fantasy Ground set up, if it's just a player module, typically it should export as a client. Depending on the rule set that you have, that should do a client.xml. And if you check read only, that's a db.xml.
If you don't check anything.
If you don't check anything, then it will be a pain in your ass.
It defaults to
I think it's common.
Common. Or I mean not common, client, right?
No, it defaults to common. I do believe. Well, let me find out.
We might have to check that. The only reason we might check that is because I've never seen a common XML. I didn't even know that existed. But I have never checked both of those when I've exported.
Matter of fact, yes, you have.
Have I?
Yes, you have. Yes, you have. Let's see here. I'm trying to think of good ones here. Like, for example, the Baldur's Gate item pack by Beamdog. That's common.
I don't have it.
I'm not sure if you have that one.
No.
That's on the Smiteworks store, by the way, ladies and gentlemen. It's made by the same people who did Baldur's Gate. Matter of fact, that's where those items come from, is Baldur's Gate. They converted them to 5th edition out of the enhanced Baldur's Gate 5th edition stuff and made a Fantasy Grounds module for it. There's a couple of other ones, like the Sword Coast Adventurers Player's Guide. Okay, whenever you get the adventure or SCAG when you get the SCAG, it comes in two formats. It comes one where it is a database module, and then there's one that is a common module. You can't use that one as a client. You cannot.
You also
use,
can't see that as a common module unless you're looking where you're not supposed to be.
Exactly. Unless you're poking your nose where it doesn't belong, then yes, indeed, you cannot
So
see that.
that's why I've never seen a common, is because most of them are packed, you know.
Yes, they're packed usually. They're usually packed up. And honestly, that's how I learned how to make modules. Is I poked my nose where it didn't belong.
Yeah.
I went into modules.
Well, and in
I exported
certain
stuff.
yeah, you can do that in some cases. Or you, I mean,
I didn't hack through, like, for example, everything that comes out of SmiteWorks is password protected.
right.
So you, as I said before, you do not hack through those, but you can still click on it, double click on it and open it in like your zip folders or whatever. And you can look at the module and like what is there and say, okay, this has a definition.xml, this has a common.xml or a DB or a client or what have you. And then it has these two folders here. And then you can look at how it's set up. You're like, okay, that's how that's set up. But you still can't open those individual files because those are all password protected. And I just wasn't going to fuck with that at all. But by looking at that, I was able to understand, like, for example, if I looked at the DMG, I knew that, okay, the DMG is player owned, or is a game master only. So, okay, db.xml equals GM only.
Right.
And, so it's a lot of,
that's the reason, that's the reason my question came up, is because the reason I've never seen common.xml is I've never had occasion to see it. There's not, most people, when you're making stuff, guys, whoever's watching this and thinking about making stuff, most often you're going to end up with client or DB. You're going to get one of those two.
Yeah, you will most often get those. And that's exactly what you want. You want one of those two. That's why I said common.xml is very rare to see. Those are, once again, the both modules that are usually only utilities of some kind, or they are going to be like pictures or, your image files, whatever. That's the most common time you're ever going to see those.
Yeah.
All right. Now comes Rob's favorite part, because he sees it over there, the big red circle, the weapon of choice.
Yes. I don't know what it happens. I just got excited.
Okay. Choose your weapon. Before you get to build your code, you got to know what you want to use for a compiler, if you want to compose everything by hand, or if you want to do both, which is use a compiler and compose it. Compilers. We have a bunch of them. Number one, and this is the one that everybody will probably start off using, the Fantasy Grounds client, which is Fantasy Grounds in and of itself, making your code that is Fantasy Grounds. Second one, Parse, which is no longer supported, but Parse has to be said because people still use it.
Yeah. No longer supported.
No longer supported, no longer updated. Susie's yelling at me because I'm yelling. And then last but not least, now this one is, but you have to be in the know in order to have it.
Right.
It's the Fantasy Grounds Parser extension, which is basically Parse, but on the Fantasy Grounds table. Now, all three of these things do exactly the same thing, except in different ways. Which, by the way, if you're using Parse and not learning the code in XML, you're basically shooting yourself in the dick twice. Just saying, because you're basically coding in XML without coding in XML. Just add a couple of brackets and you got XML. Straight XML. Coding your module in straight XML is time-consuming, tedious, and fraught with errors and gremlins. However, oh God, it is. How many times have I gotten to see the big white screen across my Fantasy Grounds when I go to test the code? Yep, that's your gremlins. However, coding in XML also allows you full control over the module and how it interacts with Fantasy Grounds. Through XML, you can settle the issues of persistent versus invasive module content and use some of the built-in FG functions in new and creative ways. Now, as I said before, this is where I was going to talk about something. Okie dokie. So, I was talking to the guys earlier about this before the stream started. Now, in our player's handbook, we have spells. Now, Rob also knows about this one too, because Rob utilizes spells for his coding modules. So we take Acid Splash, we drop it into our Actions tab. It automatically does wonderful things like puts Acid Splash in there with its save DC, its acid, and all the rest of those things. However, if you were to go and say make a module full of coding effects that you wanted to have added to a character sheet, you could do it in two different ways. You could make a character sheet, put all of your coding effects into it, export the character, rip out all the coding effects, so it's just a module in and of itself, put it back in, and you'll end up with spell effects. You could also go to the spell effects tab, or the spells tab, and just code straight out, you know, every single one of your things. For example, magic items. Since Rob and I got into the conversation of, oh, go ahead, have fun with those 4,000 magic items. So what I did, this is just an example, is I made a little adventuring gear table. And on here, I only have two things. I have a potion of healing and I have an armor of force resistance. Okay, so my potion of healing doesn't have any real text. And notice, testy test, text, test, line 1. Okay, there's really nothing there. Now, then I have a little link here. It says drag me to the Actions tab. Now, this is where we start playing around with code in XML. So it does one thing that wasn't supposed to. I throw in a potion, and now my potion automatically goes to a place called potions. Notice I have a cantrip here. It doesn't load up into cantrips. Like, unfortunately, if you code something in the spells, it will pop up in cantrips. But it comes over here, and it does what it needs to do. Now, if I click on it, on my image, or on the information link on the right-hand side, notice it does come up as a spell. And it says, okay, some text about potions, go here. But when I look in my spells tab, there is no potion of healing. So I could look up potion. There's no potion of healing. I'll even switch it over to all. There's a brew potion of healing that comes from the comprehensive equipment manual. That's a spell. But there is no potion of healing. So that is what we call non-invasive. It does not repeat itself someplace else.
I have a question about that potion.
Okay.
What happens if you drag it over again?
What? Take the same one that this one right here? Or take the one from here?
Yep. Drag it onto the action tab.
It makes a new one right there.
Okay.
But on the same time, okay, the armor of force resistance, which is a different school, quote unquote, because potions have their own, we'll say. This is an armor or a magic item. It makes its own category. So it keeps everything all said and done. Now, this is just me goofing around and fucking around with the code just to see what I could do with it. Because when you begin to learn to screw around with code, you get to do some really cool shit. Like, for example, in the comprehensive equipment manual. If I keep saying that often enough, one day it will not be tongue-tied when I say it.
Yo, the comprehensive equipment manual, is that what you're trying to say?
Yes, that one.
See,
okay,
the
notice,
difference between you and me is I can say it, I just can't remember it.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so over here in our stories, notice I have all opened up right now. There is not a single thing here. Not a soul, not a thing. Now, if I go to my sidebars and variant rules, because there's a lot of sidebars and variant rules in this book, if I pop one of these open, this is obviously a story entry. It's obviously a story entry, but it doesn't have the arrows across the bottom. It doesn't appear in the stories. Nothing. It is only here. This is the only place you can access it, is inside this module. Matter of fact, you can access it inside the reference manual or on its own, because I set them off to the side just in case somebody wanted some sort of special rule or something like that. But they have their own links and all the rest of that stuff that they can open up their own things. But that is when you start screwing around with code. When you understand what the XML code can do and what it is supposed to do, you can start putting in dummy things inside the code that make it so it's non-invasive. Now,
yeah, so just to explain that, so people might be going, well, why why? How did he do that? Like, why isn't? So if you go into any typical Fantasy Grounds module, the same text is in that module like 3 and 4 times, because one of it is in a place where it goes in the story modules. The other same text is in the place where it goes when you open the button on the side. Another place where that same exact text is in where the reference manual is, and so on and so on and so on. So what you did, obviously, was you just made it so that it didn't appear in the story thing.
Right.
Yeah.
Because every tab that is over here has a place inside the XML code.
Right.
And each one of them have their own little homes. They have their own tags. And if you know how to manipulate the tags and move the tags around properly, you can actually make them invisible.
Right. Which is
So,
kind of cool. I would have never thought of that, but that is really cool to know that you can do that.
Actually, you were my inspiration for it.
Oh, what did I do that caused that?
Your coding effects for your items.
Mm-hmm.
Because I own all of Rob's stuff, as he owns all of my stuff. There was a time where I would go look at a spell, and I'd have Rob's stuff open, so I have all of like his items and such like that open for all the coding effects, and they would be stacked in there with my spells, and I'd be like, "What the fuck? I can't find what I'm looking for because there's 4,000 item effects in amongst 800 spells, so I have to scroll through like 700 screens in order to get to the right thing that I was looking for."
You don't
of
use
course,
the filters.
I just typed it in. Yes, I know how to use the filters. But when you're kind of thinking and wandering through stuff, sometimes things pop up. And that got me thinking. I'm like, there has to be a way to hide this stuff. This is why the load for the CEM is so much lower than the load for the player's handbook. The player's handbook does something called persistency. Now, a persistent effect is something that will appear in your tabs on the right-hand side. It's there. You see it there, and you'll see it in the module itself, like, for example, spells. Now, a non-invasive is like my sidebars, which only appear here, because now you don't have to load it in multiple places. It also lowers the load on Fantasy Grounds itself. So once again, that magical 3 megabyte number is not going to be topped out as fast. So loading the player's handbook and loading up spells there, it loads it once for your reference manual, it loads it once for your spells tab. So therefore you're loading it twice. That's why it takes so long to load.
So you're using a Unix approach as opposed to a Windows approach, because Unix is direct and Windows wants to call upon 50,000 threads just to do one thing.
Exactly. Exactly. So, or as Shad just popped up, TSR, Terminal Stay Resident. So yeah, that is exactly what I did. And that's how the loads stay lower on modules that you code by hand versus something that you would do in a parser or in some sort of compiler. They are always persistent effects. They're always persistent in each one of your tabs. And you want to stay as invasive. Oh my God, my mouth stopped working. Non-invasive as possible when you do your modules. That way your players and yourself have the smoothest possible performance out of Fantasy Grounds.
Boom.
Boom. So there's that. Now, this would be a great time to give away the other thing.
Oh yeah.
All right, let's do it.
What's the prize?
All right, so this is provided by me. So once again, be sure to hand Mr. Rob Toohey your DM's Guild email address. And this is going to be a giveaway for the Not Really Complete Tome of Spells, which has over 450 spells for 5th edition coded into it from eras gone by. So it's been a pretty good seller so far. It's been pretty nice, but definitely check this one out if you don't have it already.
All right, so anybody that would like to have that, please enter !spells into the chat for the contest, and we'll pick a winner, and whoever wins can PM me their email for the DM's Guild, and Gio will get that to them. I own this, It's purple. I love it.
It is.
It's purple cover.
For the moment, it's purple. For the moment,
purple. Yeah, for the moment. And this was, how many did you say? 450, right? 450 spells?
Over 450 spells.
So it's got more spells than you need.
You can shake a stick at.
And they're all...
It actually has more spells than the player's handbook.
Yeah.
Wow.
And these are all of them, or just most of them are previous edition spells?
All of them are previous
all
edition.
of them. Okay, cool. So
most from second edition.
Okay.
Cool.
So 4 more minutes on the counter for that, and you guys can enter your phrase to be the winner. Do it now.
Awesome. All right, and last but not least, on the other hand, when you're doing straight XML, on the other hand, a combination of a compiler and hand coding in XML saves you the input of massive amounts of stuff, and shortens the amount of time that you use it. So, for example, when you guys were watching me code the CEM, I used Fantasy Grounds just to input the items in bulk because it was just easier to do it that way. However, the editing process does take time, and it takes a lot of effort to make sure all of your links are going to be proper if you want it to look good. And that, my friends, is XML coding basics.
That's the basics, yeah. Like when I made Monsters of the Guild and Monsters Without Borders, I used all of that. I used NPC Engineer to create the NPCs. Then I went into Fantasy Grounds and created a separate module to do, the credits and the story entries and whatever else I needed to do. Then I exported that module. Then I copied the XML from that module into the one where the NPCs were, and then I went into that XML and cleaned up the reference manual and the story entries and everything else. And it was a goddamn nightmare and a half. And then when you're done, it's the coolest thing you've ever done. It's really awesome.
So is NPC Engineer a compiler, or is it both?
It's a compiler.
It's a compiler, yeah.
Yep. Anything that has a graphical interface of any kind that all you have to do is input the information, like the basic information of something, like how many hit dice does it have, how many hit points does it have on average, or something like that. That's a compiler. To look at a monster or a character sheet in XML, put on a pot of coffee because you're going to be there a bit.
Uh-oh, why is this freaking out on me? Oh, here we go. So when I'm just showing on the stream now, I'm showing NPC Engineer. When he's done with it, which this could be a year or even way, who knows, because he works on it on his spare time. But when he's done with it, this will actually do everything. It'll do races, classes, backgrounds, feats, skills, spells, equipment, magic items, reference manual, tables, everything. You see they're all grayed out here. So right now all it does is the NPCs, the tokens, and the images. It'll do spells, and it will do reference manual, but it only does reference manual for the NPC, so it doesn't do other things that are in the reference manual. But by the time he's all done with it, you're going to be able to build Fantasy Grounds modules with just this, and it'll be super easy. But that's a long way away. What comes out first? This being finished or Unity? Well, we don't know. We don't know.
3 months.
3 months. Added 3 months. All right, cool. Let's see how we're doing on the contest. Oh my God, is it over? Oh, 40 seconds. All right. So if you last ditch guys, if you want to win a copy of Geo's Fantasy Grounds modules for the not really complete tome of spells, you must enter the keyword spells with an exclamation in front of it. And by the way, guys, if you do have questions on anything we covered, or everyone always forgets that we do this on the show, but you can ask questions about anything else about Fantasy Grounds. It doesn't have to be about XML. You can ask any question you want, and we'll try and answer it. There's 3 of us here. We can handle it. Yeah,
we can. And for point of note, this is what the new cover looks like, and this will be for the PDF and for the Fantasy Grounds module. Once I remove a little bit of stuff off of it.
Oh snap! Look at that.
That's
not nice. Really complete. That is nice. I like that picture. She's hot. I have a problem. Okay. I like animated women. All right, I think we got the timers out. Okay, good. Here we go. We're gonna draw a winner, and the winner is, boom, Breton613. Congrats.
Nice.
Breton613, you have won a Fantasy Grounds module copy of the not really complete Tome of Spells, which you see a picture of right there. I will put the Discord link there, so PM me. Rob has many problems. PM me your DM's Guild email so I can give it to Geo. And again, if you don't have a DM's Guild email, just go to dmsguild.com, sign up. It's free. Get an email, or you know, tell us which email you're using, and then just let me know, and we'll get you hooked up. Awesome. All right. Yeah, we did an hour and 20 minutes. We didn't think it was going to be that long, did we? We thought it was going to be like 20 minutes.
I had a question for Geo and for Rob.
Okay.
So the XML thing, basically all you're doing is if I'm trying to get my head wrapped around this because I'm not a coder. So all you're doing is basically telling I guess you're pointing the text as to where it's going to end up in relation to the interface. You're telling it what color the text is going to be. You're telling it what locations in the software it's going to go. You're telling it the formatting, so on and so forth. Is that what you're doing? And the position of the photos and stuff like that?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
I mean, yeah, like I was listening to that going, yeah. I mean, you make it sound really easy, but because there's a lot involved. But that is what you're doing. That is exactly what XML is.
That's all I wanted to know, because I figured that something like that. Because if it's like HTML, that's basically what you're doing.
Did you clear this cover with Jason, Gio?
Not yet. Matter of fact, actually, I know that there's two things I have to remove off of it. So.
That Dungeons and Dragons red banner thing, they hate that.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep, they hate that. So, yep.
And the D&D thing up top too. Yeah, you can't have that. Yep. They're gonna fucking ding you.
Yep, can't have that either. So, yeah, I have to remove both of those. But this is actually just one of the things that you guys will be seeing. Let's see if I have the cover. Do I have the cover actually made for this yet? I might. Let me open up Photoshop. We'll find out if it's made. Yeah, that's the old cover for this, but I don't have the new cover made yet.
Ooh, are you doing oh nice.
After the show.
Yeah, we're
well,
gonna
you
talk
guys
about
can
that.
ask me questions about stuff. That's fine. You can ask me questions about
We need
stuff.
to have you back, obviously. There's more to talk about. Yeah, so if you guys have questions, XML, yeah, Shad is saying XML is basically CSS for FG, which is true, although that is not all XML is, just in our case it is. Remove branding or get branded. Yeah. Oh god damn, this fucking GM or DM's Guild. They'll kill you. Then remember that time I went and I put this stupid Rob Tui purple logo, you know, my logo, this thing. I went and put it on every single thing that I have, like all 68 items in the DM's Guild. And the next day they were like, okay, no more logos. So then I was like, oh fuck. And I of course I thought it was because I did that, and you know, it was shit all over the front page. And then I go and take them off, and then I find out, oh no, you can leave them on if it was old stuff. We just don't want you to do it from the future point. And I was like so pissed. I spent all that time to put them on, and then I spent all that time to take them off. And I mean, it's just a layer in Photoshop, but it still took me a couple hours to upload and do all that shit. So I was mad. But I'm all right. Overall, I'm all right. I'm doing okay on the DM's Guild. I'm not buying any mansions, but I'm all right.
So the real doll that we were talking about earlier.
Is this going to be on the show too, or is that going to be after the show?
Well, I was just wondering if you wanted to look like that photo that was up earlier.
The one on
the hot chick with the flames. Yeah.
Realdoll.com. There we go. All right, that's not bad.
Oh god.
That's great. That's not the site I was looking at. That's a new site. I don't know. Yeah, I can run down my type for you, Leroon, after the show. I'm gonna need pictures of you, by the way.
Free, easy, and one that doesn't say no.
Yeah.
There we go.
One that's okay with everything I want to do.
Made of Kevlar.
And made of Kevlar. All right. Do we have any other questions from the chat?
I like how you say from the chat, because I know that Laren has a question for me.
Yep, I do have a question.
That is not Fantasy Grounds related at all.
Actually, it kind of is, but it kind of isn't. Is this the ambush thing, or what's going on here?
Well, that's what I want to know. Is this the ambush? What, or you got something else you're ambushing me about?
No, I just kind of wanted to know how the TTO is going, and explain just a touch of what you're doing with that.
Okay, so Project TTO. All right. Project TTO is the code name for Tabletop Online, which was, I got tired of me hearing about people pissing and moaning that FGU was going to be, it's so late, it's so late. They announced it 2 years ago. It's so late, it's so late. And I wanted to see exactly what it took in order to do it. Now, keep in mind, I've never used Unity in my life. I had downloaded it that day. I had never used C#. I had only gone to C++. Is about as far as I'd ever gone in my coding practice and my coding languages that I ever went to through when I was in college. So I had never really done it. And I watched a couple of YouTube videos, just a couple. And in 24 hours, I made TTO. Well, the beginnings of TTO, which was Sightlines, it was Fog of War, it was, all sorts of beautiful, wonderful things. And we've been adding to it slowly as I've begun to learn more and more and more things about Unity and more things about C#, JSON, Python, XML, all sorts of stuff. As I said, I've been using a lot of Microsoft Visual Studio, lots of it lately. And I've gotten to be very, very comfortable in it. That's why I have converted all of my projects for Fantasy Grounds over to that program, is because it has debuggers automatically. I had written myself a debugger a long time ago for Fantasy Grounds modules that would look for things and tell me if things were wrong, because I hated parse, because it always spat all sorts of weird shit at me. And parse. Like when I first coded the Not Really Complete Tome of Spells, it was done in parse, and it failed within like 15 lines. And I was like, son of a bitch. And so then I had to stop what I was doing, rewind, and spend 2 solid days, so 48 hours without sleeping. I think I drank about 400 pots of coffee and sat down and I coded 17,000-ish lines of code for the spells. And that's how I got that done. And I realized that there was problems that I needed to do. And so I created a debugger to find those problems. Well, Visual Studio had that, so I use that instead now. But TTO uses those same lessons I learned from Fantasy Grounds coding to make things like items and such, to make a nice visual program. And I was just streaming randomly one day about what TTO was. Yes, Shad just posted a clip of it. I was just streaming randomly one day. I'm like, I'm going to show off TTO. And that's what it was. It was me just playing around for 24 hours with Unity. And it got some ground, and people liked it, and people wanted to see more about it and wanted to do stuff with it. So that's what TTO is. It's kind of it's a pet project. I don't know if I'm ever going to do anything with it. I don't know if I'm ever going to complete it. It's just an exercise in programming. It's an exercise in making a tabletop game, or platform, I should say. And I'm just playing around, figuring out what I want to do. And I can see, now that I've gotten into it, I can see where SmiteWorks is delaying. I can understand why. They want backwards compatibility with the stuff they already have out, so that way you don't have to rebuy your player's handbook or rebuy your DMG or any of the rest of that stuff.
Yeah,
they don't want you to have to do that.
Doug said many times already that they have the Unity programming done. It's done. But they have to go through and backwards compatible 1,000 DLC stuff.
Exactly.
And the more you and I make and put in the SmiteWorks store, the longer it's going to take for them to get all to. But I mean,
Exactly.
yeah, because they have to make sure it all, because how much would that suck if they said, okay, everybody, here's Unity, and then you go to play a game and none of your crap works? That would suck ass. So they're never going to do that.
Exactly.
So
I mean, like for example, like that little trick that I did to make the potions and stuff to pop up right, it could break the whole fucking program.
Yeah. So and there's bound to be, when they release it, there's bound to be some issues, but they'll have done the bulk of working all that shit out, so it'll just be a tweak here and there, and they'll be able to do it, and it'll be fine. But
You know
yeah,
how long?
that's how long. I mean, and they only have, there's only, I mean, Smiteworks has 10 employees and only 3 of them are coders. I mean, so it does, so they're working their asses off, and people need to just calm the fuck down.
So
Yeah,
I was
what?
going to say, how many occluders are they going to have to build for the maps that are provided in the official Fantasy Grounds WotC stuff?
Well, if only I
does
knew
the
what
lighting.
an occluder word. Oh, occluders to. Oh yeah. Well, that's what they're doing too, right? They're doing it. Yeah, I don't know if they are doing that. You know that demo video they released the other day where they were drawing maps and the occluders were in the drawing already. They might have a thing where they make us do it. Who knows? I don't know. I mean, everyone thinks I know stuff. I don't. And I've not signed an NDA. I just simply don't know the information. I'm not keeping anything from anybody. It's they haven't told me because I'm not a trusted individual. I mean, whatever.
Believe me, I've tried
Doug-
to hit up Dave.
Doug trusts me with the Twitter account. That's about it. That's all he trusts me with. I mean, I don't even have the. I'm a developer, and I don't even have the third thing on Geo's list of. The extension for the parser thing. I don't have that, and I've asked for it, and they're like, yeah, we'll give it to you. Stand by.
I don't have it either. Just as a point.
They and they're not. They're very. You have to prove yourself, and I mean, I've been a developer with them for a year, and I still don't have it. So we'll see. I'll get it.
I don't want it.
Yeah, and actually, it's funny because I want to do it. But if they don't ever give it to me, then that's fine, because we know how to. I mean, we just saw for an hour and a half how you can do shit. You can figure it out.
Yeah,
you don't need it.
It's very easy. It's very, very easy
It's
to
very
get into
easy.
these programs and do stuff to them. I mean, if you really want to know how to code, if you really want to know what's what and where it goes, make one item in every single one of your tabs in Fantasy Grounds, export it, and then open it with a zip file.
And just look at it, yeah.
And just look at it and say, oh, okay, this is what this is. This is what that is. Now, I had to learn that the client common DB thing. I had to learn that by, trial and error. Now, none of you have to worry about trial and error because I just gave you that information. And now you know exactly what to do. Now, I could make the Dungeon Master's Guide if I really wanted to get, hacky. And I'm just using Dungeon Master's Guide, by the way, as an example. I would never do this because I would never hack it. But if I wanted to have the whole DMG open at all times, so I never had to worry about putting a little green button on it to say, okay, all my players can use this, I just go in and I would change it from db.xml to a common.xml. That's all I have to do. Just change the name.
Right. Yeah, so that everybody can open it. Hey, that reminds me. Is that presentation that you just showed us? It wasn't PowerPoint. What's it called? What's that thing? The free program?
It's called Prezi.
Prezi, yeah. Is that available to the public for people so they can go back and reference it without having to look at this?
They can.
Oh, good. Let's tell people how to get that.
All right. The first thing you want to do is you want to go over to geoquestergaming.com.
I'm going to do this.
And my wonderful, wonderful, wonderful web master, Mr. Shadzar, he will probably have it posted if he doesn't have it posted already, because I gave it to him earlier today. And he's really, really good about getting this stuff up. Will be available on there. Now, if you go to something like my Legends and Lore, you'll see that there is a number of prezis available in Legends and Lore for various different things. I think
cool.
I started. Yep, they're all available in there somewhere.
Okay, so it'll be there when he gets to it. Okay, good. So
Yep.
geoquestergaming.com, everybody. That's the I'll put that link in the
which
chat.
also has my links for my Discord channel if you want to join my Discord.
And that leads into I was just getting ready to ask you, where can we find you? So you at the beginning of the show you gave it all out, but geoquester.com, geoquestergaming.com, and then that has there's all of his social media links up here as well. So you want to find this guy, he's findable.
I'm very findable.
Friends. Oh, what? What? Okay. Thank you. I'm on there.
I didn't make the friends list. I asked Shad.
There's 5 good people on there. I like it. What? I can't count. So good. Okay, so the presentation that he just went through us on the show will be here as soon as Shad can get it up on the web. It'll be available to be looked at. And here's a bunch of videos on how to do stuff, which I didn't even know you had. I haven't been to your website in about a month or so I didn't know all this shit was there. That's pretty cool.
Matter
Awesome.
of fact, all of the season 4 stuff for Legends and Lore, if you click on some of those that are up there, they have, let's see, there's prezzies for them. There's links over to my YouTube channel, which is
nice.
Good. Over there. I mean, there's so much shit. There's so much shit.
Cool. Awesome. All right. I think we're done. I think we did a long show. We did over an hour and a half, which is amazing. Cool. And we covered everything in XML. We gave away the prizes. We asked people how to find Geo. We all know how to do that now. And then Celestian says Viagra. That's a good way to end the show. I don't know what he's talking about, but I just looked over to the chat and saw the word Viagra, and I'm very happy.
There's something to do with Shad.
Shad, because he's a giant boner? I don't understand. I don't know what's going on with Shad.
Well, it's because Shad can't get it up, according to Celestian.
He did say that. Shad can't get it up. Yeah, whenever Shad can get it up, I said about the web. I wasn't talking about his individual penis. I'll leave that up to him to talk about for himself. I don't like to talk about other people's penises. Except, well, I used to be a stand-up comic, and I did that a lot, but I don't do that anymore. All right. What else? Are we done? Is that it? Is there anything else to do?
Are we done yet?
I don't know. Do you guys have any other questions for me? Does anybody have any questions for me? What I'm working on, what's coming up?
Last chance for questions. Tell Geo to put in a change order, Leroon. What?
What?
Put in a change order. This is Shad telling you to put in a change order.
I see it.
Oh.
I don't know what the hell that means. I'm sure.
Oh, I know what that means.
Okay.
Yeah, now I know.
Is there anything, Geo, that you would like to give away as secret future information at this time?
Secret tidbits? Okay. I am working, as I said at the beginning, my latest Nomer is the Renaissance Man of role-playing games. Because, as many of you who have followed me for any amount of time know, I've written and done stuff with, let me think, 12 different companies. I've produced over 24 source books and adventure modules that are in hard copy or PDF or both over the years. I've worked with many gaming companies as a freelance game designer and as a staff game designer, including places like Goodman Games, Sword and Sorcery Studios, which was the D&D side of the White Wolf publishing arm. I've worked with Wizards of the Coast on Star Wars. I've worked with et cetera. But one of my feathers in my cap was, before he passed away, I got to work with Dave Arneson, co-creator of Dungeons & Dragons itself. I have been contracted recently by one of his surviving members of his player group, a man by the name, well, some of you may know him as the Great Svenny. His name is Greg Svensson. I have been contracted by him to do a super secret project. I can't say anything else because I have an NDA other than who I'm working for, and the idea of what I'm doing harkens back to the history of Dungeons and Dragons, the very pre-dawn of Dungeons and Dragons.
Chainmail.
And before chainmail.
Nice.
Yes, we're talking about the beginning. I got sent an email that started in 1973, the summer of 1973. And so
Wait,
I now
the email
have,
started in the summer of 1973?
yes,
What?
the email started in 1973 with some documents that have only been copied twice in their entire existence since 1973. I have those documents. I am the second copy. I am the second copy of these documents. And this is my super secret project that I'm currently working on. Then I have a not quite so super secret project. People have seen me talk about The Grim and the Wicked, which is a 256-page adventure module that I have been streaming along and, doing whenever I have time. Hey, Rob, when do we have time?
Never.
Yeah, exactly. Never. But it's a 256-page module. It's an adventure campaign module set in Forgotten Realms. And it is nearing a point where it will be tested. And there will be one of the three of us will be in said module. And it won't be me. One of the three of us will be in said module, running it or playing it as a playtest. It would be a private, non-stream playtest, and I am pulling together the best of the best of the best to play.
When you say one of the three of us, one of the three of who?
You, me, or Laren.
Oh, well,
it's not going to be me,
and it's not you. And I guess since I didn't know about it, I can guess who the person is. That would be Laren. By process of elimination, I would think.
Maybe I just haven't told you about it yet. Maybe this is me.
Oh, so you were assuming that I would do it if you did tell me about it. I see what you did. Congrats, Laren.
So
I had a question for you, Gio.
What's up?
Now I'm really gonna ambush you. Okay. So the Dungeon Crawl Classics. Did you have anything to do with those?
I was the grandfather of the Dungeon Crawl Classics. I wrote Dungeon Crawl Classics #1, and every one of them since then, and the 200 bazillion thousand line of them, has followed the style and format that I created for #1.
Okay. My question to you:
Idols of the Rat King.
Do you have the rights to those?
No.
Specifically?
No.
Okay. We'll leave it at that.
Now, okay, that actually brings up a really good point. And this is why, ladies and gentlemen, during the presentation, I said, don't ever use pirated material. The reason why I say that is because back in the day, and it's still current today with people who work for various game companies, the people who write your games, the people who draw your maps, the people who make your artwork, they don't get into it to be rich, but they do want to have their time paid for. It takes months and months and months of development, testing, re-editing, etc., to go through every one of these things that you guys get to play and just kind of go, this module sucks. Well, there's a reason for it, because either it was rushed through production or, the people just wanted to throw something out there without testing it. And the people who made those things are the people who you're taking the food out of their mouths, not out of the company's mouths. When you think that, for example, a 64-page adventure module, most freelance writers, which a freelance writer is a person who doesn't have a home, they are not connected to any specific gaming company. They are the ones who design just for anybody kind of thing. They're not the Wolfgang Bauers or the Mike Merles or any of the rest that have a home. It's everybody else. They get paid usually in royalties and only royalties, and they're not good royalties either. They're usually like 5% of net, and which ends up being something like 25 cents per 32-page module. Or they get paid per word, which is anywhere between, depending on the game company, it could be anywhere between 2 cents to 7 cents a word. they don't make money. And every time somebody takes a pirated piece of software or a pirated PDF or a pirated Fantasy Grounds module and decides that, hey, I got this for free, ha, 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 I got it for free, I didn't have to spend money for it, you're not fucking the company. You're fucking the person who created it. Because the company's getting their money hand over fist out of the people who are going to buy it anyway. It's the people who pirate that are screwing the authors who are not getting paid anything. So keep that in mind the next time one of your buddy goes, hey, here's a free PDF. Look at it for a second, think about it for a second, and then go, you know, I should really buy this because somebody out there needs this to pay their mortgage, to put food on their table, to do something else. Like, for example, Rob, do you have a job outside of making Fantasy Grounds and streaming?
No.
There you go. So if somebody was out there and had a website that you could download all of Rob's Fantasy Ground modules for free, you're fucking him because that's his source of income. You're fucking him. So don't.
And not the good way.
Not in a good way. Yeah, not in a good way. You don't even give him the common courtesy of a reach around, and you're using crunchy peanut butter as a lube. So
oh, that's a new one. I didn't hear that one yet. That's awesome.
Exactly. So
yeah, everybody should. I mean, most people that I talk to in the gaming community are very much on board with, you know, anti-piracy and paying for it. And there's even you know, people that buy stuff on the DMs Guild. I've even had people go buy stuff from me twice because they're really appreciative of the work and they want to support me, and so that is very nice to hear. But yeah, I mean, growing up, I mean, you know, I'm 52 years old, and I started on computers when I was 11, and when I was a younger man, I used to go to eBay Pirate, or, you know, all these other sites where you could download games and stuff, and I would always do it to where I want to check it out and run it and see if I like it. Then if I did, I would go buy the game, right? But it is very bad to just, and if you search around, you can find almost anything you want for free. And music, movies, I mean, you can go pirate anything you want. But it's just a very bad idea, and you're not a good member of society if you're stealing from people. I just don't like it.
Going to prison over something like that's no joke.
Yeah.
Well, and I've seen some really good gaming companies. I mean, this is a little, I mean, we'll once again bring it right back to gaming. I've seen really good gaming companies go under because of piracy.
Wow.
And I mean, they were producing really great stuff. They had some really cutting edge, like, I mean, I'm not sure if some of you guys have been playing long enough, but anybody remember Bad Axe Games?
No, I don't.
No.
Yep, because they had one fantastic fucking module that got pirated the motherfucker out of, and nobody ever saw them again because they couldn't afford to pay the people who made it.
That stinks.
Yeah, see, that's bad.
It's really bad.
Yeah.
So if you work for a company, let's just say XYZ, and you put your heart and soul into writing the module, and you have a contract with them that says you get 50 cents on the dollar, or no, excuse me, 10 cents to the dollar, if you're lucky. What if said company isn't doing enough to advertise and to put that out there for you?
There is not a damn thing you can do about it.
There's nothing. Yeah, it's like comedy. You
That's horrible.
book a show in Cleveland, Ohio, and what if the club doesn't advertise your show and you go to do the show and there's nobody there? Well, you
That
still get the
stinks.
money, but yeah, that's happened. You know, but
Yeah,
unless
You get some sort of like random pittance that it's like, oh, isn't this nice? You gave me $20 for my cab ride back to the hotel that I have to pay for out of my pocket. Yay, thanks for that.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's why people, you know, there's some people that are pretty good at promoting themselves. Like Mike Schlee's a good example. The cartographer Mike Schlee, he's got a website.
Mhm.
And he's out there and promotes his stuff, and if people like it, they go buy it. And I'm a big fan of his. He's my favorite. He's my favorite WotC artist, as it were. There's many of them that they use, but he's my favorite.
Oh yeah, definitely.
But
He's
but
one of my
yeah, you
favorites,
definitely like. There was a map that he had. There was a set of maps I bought off his website because they're not in any WotC book. There's something that either just didn't get used or hasn't been used yet or whatever. And I really liked them, and it was so easy for me to find. those images on Google search. But no, I went to his website and bought them because he, that's his art and he deserves it. And so I gave him the money, whatever that was. It wasn't, it was only like $10 or something, but I really wanted to support that effort because I don't know, it just sucks to see people, to me, stealing a PDF or a mod file or a movie or music or whatever, that's the same as you coming to my house and coming in my house and taking something off my table and walking out. It's the same.
Taking a dump and walking away.
Taking a dump on my living room floor.
Exactly.
Don't even leave a note.
Yeah, let me know at least, why is there corn on my floor?
Let
me know why.
You recently had corn on the cob, and that's very upsetting to me. But
so, and I want to address a question that was a little bit earlier up in chat that kind of scrolled by. But Boffrin, if you want to find the quote unquote porn of Susie, you have to look for it. I'm not going to tell you what the website is.
Oh, hold on! I thought that was just a joke.
Let's.
Maybe it isn't.
Porn.
No, I was going to ask you, Jeff. So, if you were still, let's say, you work for Goodman Games directly still, and you're still, are you still working for them?
I worked as a freelancer with them, and then I was a staff writer with Zeitgeist Games, which made a partnership with Goodman Games on the Blackmore stuff.
Okay. So what I was going to ask you is, are you allowed to self-promote your own product there, or do you have to go through their guidelines?
Let me tell you, back in the day, people, it's kind of funny, but at the same time, it's actually the truth, and it's a sad truth. A fair number of publishers, when 3rd edition rolled around, and we had that big D20 glut, which everybody and their brother was like, "Ooh, I can make stuff for D&D, so let me go make something about, for unlawful carnal knowledge or whatever." And thank you, Ryan Dancy, you fucking twat. But anyway, so people were making all sorts of stuff, and they called themselves authors, and they weren't. They were not game designers. They were not authors. And because of this, companies that were good and had good shit going for them started telling their authors that they were the ones who needed to do the promotions for their stuff. If they wanted to make money off of their stuff, it became a pyramid scheme. It was, if you want to make money, tell 4 of your friends, and have those 4 friends tell 4 of their friends, et cetera, right down the line. That way you get paid. Because if you don't do this, you're not going to get paid. So back in the day, I used to go by the online name of Black Knight back in the day. And I would have to go on Mortality Radio, which was it was the very first internet radio show that was devoted to role-playing games. So you can call it the very first role-playing podcast. And I had to go on there on like a weekly basis to pimp stuff. I mean, you actually picked up a telephone and you called them at their studio in Florida, and you were put on air and you would talk about stuff. And I would have to pimp myself so hard that there were days I felt dirty and had to go shower afterwards because, I mean, you had to do it. You had to be a prostitute in order to sell the book that you had just spent months writing. And ladies and gents, let me tell you, writing an adventure module for the public versus your table is 2 entirely different monsters. I can write an adventure for my players inside an hour and run it that night with no issue. Writing one and running the same style, like a 10 or 16 page module that goes to publication, takes months. Takes absolute months of testing, retesting, editing, re-editing, layout, design, send it back, bring it this way, do it that way, turn it upside down, shake it, find the halfling and the little chip mark on the side. You have to do all these kinds of things in order to make a good module or a source book. God forbid a source book, because those get fucking huge with research involved and time. And Susie remembers when I used to do this full time, when I was a game designer full time, and for 5 years I was a game designer full time, I think it was. I would have probably 6 or 7 different projects all going at the same time. I stopped running games. Role-playing became a business. And all I was doing was cranking stuff out. And if I wasn't writing, I was researching. And I think I slept 2 hours a day. and all the rest of the time I was working.
Yeah, not role-playing games, but I led that same life in a different industry, and a lot of people think it's all fun and games, but no, it's a business.
Yeah, exactly. I mean,
and it takes
Rob,
all your time, and if you're lucky to be in the 0.001% of people, you become a celebrity, and if not, you just pay your rent and hope you don't die.
Exactly.
Fall to the wayside.
Yeah, but I mean, I got sick, so obviously I had my decision made for me, but I'm out of that business now, and I'm into my new thing. And it's funny because my friend calls me and he says, I said, oh, I can't. I got a show and I got to get, I got this module done. And he goes, oh, you mean you're working? And I said, oh, all right, fine. I guess you're right. This has turned into a job. I mean, I actually work for SmiteWorks now. I have totally never even thought any of this was going to happen, but at least I'm having a good time, and I'm doing it because I want to do it, not because I feel I need to do it. So that's good. People in their lives should always try to do what they want. And most of us, especially in America, sometimes we end up doing what we have to do and not what we want to do. So I consider myself to be very lucky. And if I talk more about it, I'm going to start crying. So I'm going to stop now.
I am laughing my ass off. Celestian is the only human being I have ever seen on the planet stick up for Ryan Dancy. That's funny. That's funny. I have to say, Ryan Dancy is probably one of the funniest individuals I've ever seen in my life. For those of you who don't know who he is the reason why there's something called the SRD or the OGC or the OGL. He was the lawyer for Wizards of the Coast that created the original open gaming license, and he opened D&D to the world and allowed everybody to go ahead and create their own content that they could publish. But he is a twat and a douchebag, but he's a funny twat and douchebag because he wanted to prove to Wizards of the Coast and to others how bad it could be. So the Book of Erotic Fantasy is what came out of it. He made something that was so negative and so bad on purpose just to prove the fact that the OGL and the OGC was a horrible thing. And I loved it.
That's funny. Yeah, I'm looking at his Wikipedia page. So I do want to give away some information about a couple of upcoming shows that we're going to be doing here on Sunday nights. Next week is going to be Mordenkainen's or Mordenkainen's Tomophos, depending on how you like to say it. And we will be going through that because that comes out on the Friday before. And we are going to give away 2 copies of the Fantasy Grounds module, so be here for that show. One I'm going to pay for, one Leroon is going to pay for, and we're going to give those away. Then the week after that is Not a Real Show with the people that we've talked about. Schmo, Joe Numbers, Lazy Stinner, McClancy, Tall Joe, and Urash are going to be here for that. And then the following week is going to be FG Gamer Girls, which is going to, of course, include all of the females that have agreed to show up and talk to us. We don't know why they did, but they said they would. Zovia, Suzy Q, Alex, LUN, Fury Fate, and Rogue will all be here for that show. So please mark your calendars, guys. Just be here every Sunday forever, because that's how long we plan to be here. And obviously we need to have Geo Quester back, because he has a lot to say and a lot to impart upon the world. So we will schedule
when I
him
find time.
Yeah. Well, we only wanted an hour, but it ended up being almost 2, so which is awesome. But I am going to go ahead and say that we're going to end the show, because if we don't, then at 9 o'clock I'll say we're going to end it, and then at 10 o'clock I'll say we're going to end it, and then at 11 o'clock, and then it'll be like 2 a.m. for Geo, and he'll have passed out, so we can't just keep going. But I would
sleep when you're dead.
Yeah, sleep when you're dead. I would like to thank everybody. I'm going to go ahead and put the slides up here for everybody. I would like to thank those people. I believe, I'll know after the show when I get the stats, but I think this was our biggest audience we've ever had.
Oh, yeah.
There were 30...
Can I do a couple?
Yeah, absolutely. Go ahead.
Couple shameless plugs. I'm trying to do as many times as I can on Fridays, the DM class, and that's 3:30 p.m. Pacific time. And also next week, once the confirmation of the Mordenkainen's Book of Tomes comes out, I'm having a giveaway in the college. So if you guys fill out the survey, you'll be entered on there, and I will do a live drawing right in the main chat channel.
So that's 3 opportunities that I know about that someone can win Mordenkainen's Tome of Foes, 2 from our show and 1 from Fantasy Grounds College. So there you go. Gio, any final words, sir?
Let's see. I've got a whole bunch of stuff. Let me think. Every Wednesday at 10 a.m. Eastern, we have Dragon Mountain, a conversion of the 2nd edition box set, Dragon Mountain to 5th edition, that I run. Thursday mornings, every other Thursday morning at 10 a.m. Eastern, we have The Sundering, the very first 5th edition module that was ever produced, or campaign series, I should say, that was ever produced, is called The Sundering. I run that every other Thursday. Every other Thursday night, opposite that, I run Out of the Abyss at 8 p.m. Eastern. Every other Friday at 3 p.m. Eastern, we have Tomb of Annihilation with our European crew. And every other Friday night, which is opposite that, we have Dreams of the Red Wizards, which is the 2nd series of adventure modules for 5th edition. That is at 8 p.m. Eastern. And then every other Saturday at 8 p.m. Eastern, we have Dungeons & Dragons Legacy Adventures, where we go backwards in time throughout the history of Dungeons & Dragons. Everything is older than 10 years. And what we do is, between TSR and Wizards of the Coast, they have written a number of modules and produced them that actually had a plot line that was unintentional. And we are following the plot line. And it's a full campaign and such, and people really, really enjoy it. Other than that, I'm coding, or I'm drawing maps, or other such things, and you can always get in touch with me on Discord or via email and Twitter.
And always check out his channel. Can't imagine there's anybody watching that doesn't know this, but if you are that person, twitch.tv/GeoQuester, GeoQuester, GeoQuester. Don't spell it like I do, spell it the right way.
Yeah, spell it the right way. Spell it the right way.
And Leroon, anything from you, sir?
Nope, I said my plugs, and like I said, just come on over to the college, learn what you can, try to earn that graduate tag. It's not really that hard to do, just a couple classes, maybe do a couple one-shots, and that'll help you have a little bit more consideration for tables like Geos or some of the other communities that we're linked with. So keep that in mind.
All right, cool. And I'll be back tomorrow night with Module Creation Monday at 6 p.m. Pacific. And thanks everybody for watching. And on behalf of our special guest GeoQuester and my co-host Leroon, I would like to thank everybody for coming by. And we will see you next time. And until then, good gaming.